Greenlight Network presents Football Time.
Hey, and welcome to the Football Time Show. We're back in action after a filled holiday week with family in town that sort of gummed up the works a little bit about getting the show in. There was lots of non-sleep and not a whole lot of time to make NFL bets, but nonetheless, back for NFL Week 13, and what a hell of a week to be back. I think this is going through the games, not necessarily betting-wise, but going through the games. This is probably the best week, I think, matchup-wise, that we've had some games pretty much all season long. I'm really looking forward to a handful of these games for sure. What did you make of Week 13 slate? Gambling-wise, I'm a little bit lighter on it. I want to see if you can talk me into a couple of them that I want to take, but I just feel like it's a bad idea. But what did you make of Week 13?
Listen, I do like the matchups, at least on paper, and what we're going to see from certain teams. But as far as gambling is concerned, I wouldn't say I'm light. I was able to find something for at least just about every game. But there are a couple that I'm kind of hoping that you can sell me on. All
right. So we're going to try to sell each other on a couple bets. I hope we're on the same side we're willing to be on.
That's what I was going to say. Hopefully it's not the same game.
All right. Let's kick things off. This one I was in Tweenerville with the Tennessee Titans versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And after last week, I must admit, due to a selling job by our man Dynamite David all week 12 about how great the Titans were going to be, they scored pretty much no points and then jumped off sides on a field goal that essentially cost them the game. So nonetheless, Titans get a loss. I lose a lot of money on the Titans that I'm blaming on Dynamite David. I guess he could blame me for World Cup loss bets for the last 2 weeks. But nonetheless, Titans at the Eagles. This is one of those good games I was talking about. But gambling-wise, it opened at like a high number at 7. It's been really, really bet down here, down to about 4.5. What do you make of this matchup? I want to dive into that Titans pool again, but once again, I'm a little nervous that they will be able to get enough points. I don't think they can win outright if they can't get to 24, because I think the Eagles can get to 24. So what did you make of this game?
Well, listen, it's a really intriguing matchup, at least on paper. You have, probably what a lot of people consider the top team in the AFC South going up against one of the best teams in the NFC. Really more of a true test for Philadelphia if Tennessee tends to show up how they have in their big wins. The question is, where are they going to get points from? As you mentioned, I think that this game probably favors Philadelphia a lot more, and Vegas seems to think so based off how the lines opened up. It's dropped down to, I believe it's at 4.5 as of this morning, which is not horrible, but I'm tempted. I'm tempted to kind of ride with Dynamite and his Titans here, but I just don't see where they can get that many points. I just don't see where they can get the points from. That's my biggest issue here. But I was able to find a few plays in this one. So I don't know if you want me to start off or you want to go first. It's up to you.
All right. Brief World Cup intermission as Mbappe slots a top corner one in there. And I think that probably just covered a handful of bets for the Greenlight Network team.
Who scored? Mbappe?
Yeah, he put one in the top corner. So brief interlude as the World Cup intertwines, as we all needed the Mbappe goal up there.
It just goes to show we do a little bit of everything here at Greenlight Network.
Yes, we do. And we do it while watching the World Cup. So.
And there's Dynamite. There's Dynamite chiming in, too.
Yes, I know. Everybody is very pumped up. The problem I have here with the Titans and Eagles here is the Titans' run defense has been really, really good. And you look at it and you think, that might match up well versus the Eagles. But the one thing I will give the Eagles, they have been pretty much a just sort of hybrid team. If they need to run the ball, they can with Hurts and Sanders and a couple of their other guys. But if they need to throw the ball, they can do that too with Smith and A.J. Brown on the outside. Before Goddard got hurt, it was a little more, they had that tight end in the middle. But they just seem malleable. So if you shut down their running game, then they might just spread you out and start passing on you. And the Titans' pass defense has definitely not been as good as the run defense here. And then I worry about scoring. The Titans managed to stay in these games, but at that number that it opened in the 7-6 range, I think I would have been real aggressive on the Titans here. But now that it's shifting down to that 4 range, I'm giving the Eagles 24. Does that mean I think the Titans can get to 20? And I'm not sold that they can get to 20. So I'm curious, do you think they can get to 20? And if they get to 20, would you go hard on the Tennessee Titans?
Listen, as talented as Henry is in the backfield for Tennessee, he can do just about everything for you. The problem is that you start running the ball more, you start draining the clock, it gives you less opportunities. Sometimes it puts you in third and long situations based off, what type of runs you can get in that game. So I don't think they can get that many points. Now, will I be shocked if they do? No, I won't be. But, just off the top of my head, my gut tells me that there's no way they can get that many points, especially when you consider the fact that if they do have to pass, this Eagles team is pretty stout at getting after the quarterback. So it scares me a little bit. You mentioned the fact that Tennessee is pretty good against the run, and they are. But one of the things that they're pretty weak against is allowing receiving yards from the backfield to the running backs. I believe they give up the 8th most receiving yards to running backs in the league. So, Sanders is pretty much a dual threat running back. I know he's not really looked upon as that, but he is. He can catch out of the backfield and he can run the ball. So if they shut him down, it's just an extra weapon, for the passing game that they'll look into.
Yeah, you just sort of spoke on it there about the malleability that I was talking about the Eagles. You can shut down their run, but then you mention it. They can go to Sanders. They can go to Scott passing out of the backfield. They can just, drop down to Brown and Smith. It's a hard offense to stop. So I ended up passing on it. I got no play on this. I probably, lean Titans. I was going to see if you were really heavy on the Titans here, but it doesn't seem like you're real heavy on the Titans. It doesn't seem like you're in love with the Eagles either on this one. It's just one of those watch two sort of top teams here play and see how they do. The other thing I wanted to, we'll probably get to it a little more on the Jags game here, but the other thing you could sort of talk yourself into, it's not high probability, but the Titans still got a game versus the Jaguars, coming off that loss last week. If they lose this game, then lose the game to the Jaguars, you start getting into a little bit of nervous territory for the division. It's not nervous right now, but we'll get to it when we get to the Jaguars. But I must say, I thought that game last week versus the Ravens, where you saw Lawrence made 2 drives to come back and bring that team back and win them the game. I think they're starting to find their feel. I don't know if they're quite ready to go on a 6-game win streak here, but I'd certainly, if I was the Titans, I'd think I'd need this game a lot more than I did, a week ago.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me give you my picks for this game, and then we can, kind of go from there. So originally, when I was looking at this Philadelphia minus 4.5, it seemed more intriguing than it did, earlier on when I thought maybe Tennessee plus the 7. But I didn't like it too much, which is why I went to an alternate line here at minus 2.5. I know it doesn't seem like a huge leap here, but from minus 110 to minus 169 for dropping a few points, selling a few points, I thought it was a pretty good idea here, especially if it happens to stay close where both teams try to run the ball a lot more than we anticipate them to. So I've got Philly here, alternate line, minus 2.5 at minus 169. I've got A.J. Brown, anytime touchdown, the revenge touchdown here at plus 118. I've got Sanders over 72.5 rushing and receiving yards combined. Again, this is more of a, how many yards they give up to running backs in the passing game. So it's a combination of that. And then I've got a Derrick Henry anytime touchdown at minus 125.
Yeah, I got two plays here. I'm going heavy on the A.J. Brown. He was getting plus in the touchdowns. So anytime touchdown, A.J. Brown plus 120. And then A.J. Brown 2+ touchdowns at plus 750. I don't know what came across the lines this week on 2+ touchdowns or 100+ yards games, but it seemed like
they're back up a bit.
everything was dropped down like 200 points lower. There were even some 100+ yards rushing games for guys that were sitting in the like plus 120. And I was a little, I'm like, is there an under to give me an offer here? But yeah, A.J. Brown 2+ touchdowns, 750, anytime touchdown, A.J. Brown 120 for me on that one. So those are the two I got there. Anything else on this one that you think might be relevant?
No, I mean, there might be a chance here for a same game parlay, but with both teams kind of being up and down defensively, especially Tennessee here, makes me a little worried here. So I'm sticking more to the straight bets.
Yeah, I think that's sort of where we're going. I only have one parlay today out of all the games. So we'll move on to the next one. And this was the one I'm curious which way you're going to go here. New York Jets versus the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings 3-point favorites. I will say I thought this was a little bit low here for the Vikings at home versus the Jets. I know everybody is enthused with Mike White fever here, but let's dial it back a little bit. He beat up on the Bears defense here. It wasn't exactly like he was going up against the formidable defense there, but it's not like the Vikings are all that great on defense, but I think they'll put up a little bit more of a fight than the Bears did the week before. But even with this number lower than I think it should be, I sort of wanted to grab the Jets here just because I think defensively they can give the Vikings problems, but it just wasn't quite enough points for me. I was a little curious where you sit on Jets Vikings here.
Well, I'll start off with this. Last week, we didn't really have a show because of family and the holidays and all that. But the Jets made me some money last week, and I think they made me a little bit of money the week before that. But this week, I'm jumping off the Jet wagon here because I just think Minnesota's a better team overall. You look at the numbers, and they don't really say that. You spoke on Mike White and how successful he's been over the last few weeks. And he's going up against a team that gives up the most passing yards to quarterbacks. They gave up the 5th most rushing yards to quarterback. Now, I know that he's not really a per se rushing quarterback, but he's a young guy with a lot of athletic ability. So, there might be a play there, but I'll give you what my plays are in this game here. I'm going to go ahead and ride Minnesota here minus the 3 at plus 100. I just think they're a better team. And this is no stab at the Jets. They've been playing really well. They have a good season, but I just think Minnesota's better right now. Then I've got Davis over 35.5 receiving yards at minus 119. Again, this is more of a testament to how many yards the Vikings give to opposing quarterbacks than anything. And White's also been playing pretty good. So my last one here for this one, I've got Wilson over 58.5 receiving yards at minus 123.
Yeah, so you are really on the Jets, which makes me feel even better about sort of passing on taking the Jets on this one. I can't talk myself into the Vikings just because I
completely understand. You don't even have to explain that. I think everybody knows.
Well, I think I ended up trusting them once, and that's when they got beat like 35-10. So I pretty much rolled up my ship and just said, I will wait till the playoffs, and then when they end up losing to the Tampa Bay Bucks or something in the first round, I'll enjoy my winnings there. But nonetheless, so I guess I pass on the Jets. I sort of took the Jets without taking the Jets here. You saw Bam Knight last week sort of break out a little bit in camp. He was the talk of camp with Brycey Hall. He was actually having a better running back camp than Brycey Hall was. He didn't really get a shot till last week. So I figure if he has a good game, that probably speaks, to the Jets having a good game. So I can take Bam Knight anytime touchdown plus 125, and Bam Knight 2+ touchdowns 8-1. And if he goes off, Jets probably play well and are in this game. That way I don't have the Jets, but it also gives me a little cushion there that if the Jets do end up playing well, I got some protection there with the running back. So that's what I ended up having on this one. I was curious if you were going to be real heavy on the Jets, but you seem to be riding Minnesota. Which I get because the line at 3, that just seems really, really low at home.
At home, yeah.
I know we all love the Jets, but I think you look at the Jets and the Vikings, I think you think the Vikings are the much better team here.
Yeah, at least, just on paper where they stand right now, a much younger Jet team that's definitely surprised a lot of people. But just if you gave me a choice, I'd have to ride with the Vikings on this one.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to basically, I don't know how to handicap this game of the week. Cleveland Browns at the Houston Texans. Texans coming off a bye. Deshaun Watson taking over. It's -8 for Cleveland. I really don't know what to do here because, one, I have no earthly idea what they're going to do with Deshaun Watson. I can't figure, I probably shouldn't say anything definitive about the Browns because Lord knows they will pretty much do the exact opposite of what I'm thinking. But I can't figure they come out here and open Deshaun Watson up and have him throw 35 times and run 10 times. He hasn't played in 2 years. There's been no real training camp for him either. He's just being plugged into the last fourth of the season. So I just don't know what we're getting. A handful of swing passes to Chubb, and that's probably going to be enough to beat the Texans here, but I just really didn't know how to handicap this game. The Texans have really sort of dropped off a little bit here, so I didn't want to be real aggressive on taking that +8, but I had no interest in taking the Browns -8. So I was curious your take on this one.
No, I'm on the same boat as you. I just think that, for the first game of Watson's return, I think the 8 points is just a little too much for a team that really hasn't shown consistency throughout the season so far. And I gave him the benefit of the doubt, even though I don't like the Watson pickup. I didn't like the trade. I was against it. I still thought that, once he got back, if they could at least maintain a consistent level of play, then they would be a contender. But they haven't done so. They haven't really shown the ability to do so. So I can't jump on that 8 point spread here. And even so, just looking at the stats up and down, we don't know how this offense is going to operate with Watson under center. It completely changes the outlook of it and the possible outcome from what these players are going to be able to do here. But I was able to find a few plays here. Really quick, though, before I give you my picks, I just wanted to give you a couple things you could probably, dissect for yourself and see if you can make any plays off of it. This Houston defense gives up the most yards to running backs. So they gave up the most touchdowns to running backs. I believe they're 8th in the league as far as receiving touchdowns to tight ends. So if you want to possibly look for a sleeper tight end pick here for Cleveland with Watson back in the fold, then maybe that's something you could play for Houston's side of the ball. They give up the 6th most rushing yards to running backs. I'm trying to recall here real quick. 2nd most rushing touchdowns to running backs. And what was the last thing? 8th in receiving touchdowns to wide receivers, if I'm not mistaken. So there's some possibilities for some plays here, but I'll give you what mine are for this game. I've got two plays for this game. I got Pierce over 68.5 rushing yards at -115. And then I've got a same game parlay, which I'll kind of give you a little later on in the show.
Yeah, I just have 2 Watson ones. Passing touchdowns, he had an over-under set at 1.5 with juice towards the over on that. I'm going under 1.5 here at -105. And then Deshaun Watson interception was at +140. Like I said, he hasn't played in 2 years. I figure even though this Texans defense is not what we'd call a legit NFL defense. It still has NFL players on it with NFL speed. So I just feel like, it'll at least take him a handful of games to catch up to speed, and there might be a late throw here or there. And honestly, if they get up big, there might be the off chance that they start opening it up and sort of taking it like a training camp. So and letting him throw a little bit more, and that's where a pick can come. So that's where I went with that. Under on the touchdowns, under 1.5, minus 105, and then Deshaun Watson interception at plus 140. I thought those were pretty good.
I looked at the interception one, and I thought about taking it. And the only thing that caused any pause and me hitting the submit button was the fact that, as you mentioned, even though this is an NFL caliber defense, it's not one of the better defenses in the league. And I just mentioned some of the stats they give up, but that's not to say that, with all the rust that he could be having from coming back after 2+ years or so of not playing, that he throws at least a gimme here or there.
Yeah, and the other thing with the way they can run the ball, like I said, if this game's anywhere near close, he might throw 9-10 times, which wouldn't give you the chance for an interception as well. So there's that, but looks like we're both negatives on the line on this one. Just too weird, sort of a game to really play. And the other thing, Cleveland's defense has been awful against the rush as well. And the one thing the Texans have done really well this year is run the ball. So, I wouldn't be in a real rush to go out and grab that -8, considering the Texans might be able to run the ball just as well as the Browns here in this game.
I don't recall looking at what the over-under on this game is, but the under might be a solid play, especially with how many yards both teams give up on the ground. This could be literally like an entire rushing attack game like we saw a couple years back with New England, where they just run the ball nonstop. And if that's the case, then the under has a good shot at hitting. But I'm assuming this under is probably like at 38.5 or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember quite what it was. Like 42 sort of sticks in my brain. But, don't hold me to that because I was looking through, a whole lot. And they were all in and around the same area. All right, let's go to the next game. I mentioned the Jags here, and this is going to be one of my plays. I know it's a risky play to take the Jags because they've been awful on the road here, but Jacksonville goes to Detroit. Detroit's 3-game win streak was broken over Thanksgiving in Buffalo. They fought pretty hard in that game, got that touchdown, but left the Bills a little bit too much time. And, whatever Dan Campbell game clock management skills are. Somehow they degraded to even worse in that game. But nonetheless, I talked about it a little bit. I was really, really impressed with the Jags last week versus Baltimore. Got down, came back, Baltimore drives down, gets another touchdown, and you're like, all right, Jags did it once. They aren't going to do it twice. Lawrence came right back down, drove back down, got him another score. Granted, they let, Tucker kick a 67-yard field goal. Came up short, but nonetheless, I was really, really impressed with the Jags. And the other thing, you're starting to see Lawrence really start to make throws, like real level NFL throws. And I sort of think you just write this off here a little bit like last year. And this is Trevor Lawrence's rookie season, and you're starting to see the growth. And I'm starting to see the growth a little bit in this team. And if they can use their draft pick here to get another sort of high-level receiver, or playmaker next year, mix it with Calvin Ridley, who will be on the team next year. I think this Jags team's starting to really come into their own here. So I'm going to ride the Jags plus the 1 here and have them close this season on a pretty good hot streak.
Yeah, listen, it's amazing what a coach who wants to be there instead of being at a local bar back in college town will do to the development of a young quarterback. But there's a few plays I've got in this game. Before I hit those, I just kind of want to give you some. This seems like a very favorable game for prop bets as far as things are concerned, just based off what both these defenses give up here. The Lions give up the 5th most passing yards, 6th most passing touchdowns. They give the most rushing yards to quarterbacks. They give the most rushing touchdowns to quarterbacks. third most rushing touchdowns to running backs, eighth most receiving touchdowns. Third most receiving touchdowns to tight ends, eighth most receiving yards to tight ends. It's all over the place here. So there's a lot of potential here for plays here, but I've only got 3 in this game that I felt really good about, and I'll give them to you really quick. I'm going to write Etienne anytime touchdown at -110 here. I've got Kirk over 60.5 receiving yards. I know that he hasn't been as explosive as he was to begin the year, but it seems like he's starting to come into his own as a development for the young quarterback. It seems to improve every week. And my last one here, I got St. Brown anytime touchdown at +110, simply because they gave up the 4th most receiving touchdowns to wide receivers. Jacksonville Jaguars do.
All right, let me. I wanted the player props, but a lot of them were juiced. You mentioned Travis Etienne. He was one of the ones I looked at for 100 yards, and it was not even 2-1, and I was highly disturbed. I'm like, 100 yards is a little bit difficult to get here, so. I didn't take many. I took, Trevor Lawrence passing touchdowns over 1.5 at -120. I think that one's the best one. You mentioned the receivers here. Kirk's probably the best bet, but it was hard for me to pick out one really that I thought was going to be worth it. So I sort of passed on that. So I only had one player prop here, Trevor Lawrence passing touchdown over 1.5. Probably should have went a little more heavy on the Lions, but it's a little weird to sort of pick and choose theirs as well. So I got 2 plays in this one, Jacksonville Jaguars -1 versus the Detroit Lions, and Trevor Lawrence passing touchdowns over 1.5 -120. All right, let's go to the next game. This one, I will be honest, I had no plays on because I had no clue really what to do with it. I can't touch Baltimore at -9, but I don't know the number that it would take to get me to take the Denver Broncos, but 9 is not it. I can promise you that. So
I love the confidence.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with this, honestly, because you've seen the Ravens give up leads, and I think that's what I'm most concerned about is, Ravens get up big, couple maybe cheap touchdowns for the Broncos, though they seem to struggle even getting those. But I'm curious what you think about this game.
The thing about this Denver team is that defensively, they're not horrible. It's been because of that defense that they're actually able to stay in games. A lot of their games have actually been a lot closer than people anticipate, even with the struggles of Russell Wilson. A lot of that has to do because that defense, they may not be considered elite, but they show up and they play hard. You look at Baltimore's defense, that's probably the polar opposite here. A defense that sometimes plays great, but then eventually dies out, especially towards the second half of games. I thought about doing what is it called? A double result or double met, where basically you pick the first half and then the second half winners. I thought about that for a second, but even then, I don't trust this Denver offense enough to take a Baltimore-Denver double here. So I've got one play in the game, and it's just based off stats here. This Baltimore team, they give up the 5th most receiving yards to running backs, 3rd most receiving yards to wide receivers. They give up a lot here. But even then, rushing-wise, they do a pretty good job at least containing the running backs. So for that reason, I'm going to write the Murray over 70.5 rushing and receiving yards combined at +120. And that's really my only play for this game. I think that if anyone's going to have a breakout game, it's probably going to be him.
Yeah, the thing I just didn't know quite what to do with in this one is I'm a little scared that the Denver Broncos, you saw it last week, possibly might want to kill Russell Wilson. And then at what point do they just start letting up, a ton of points? Because, for one, I think everybody knows it. That coach is not going to make it to year 2. He will probably be gone fired at the end of this year. And so the defense doesn't have a lot to play for. This season is over And I'm just like, yeah, the Denver defense has been good, but at what point do they start to sort of pack it in and shut it down? And I don't think you want that versus the Ravens, because then they can just hand the ball off and run it with Gus Edwards or Lamar Jackson or whichever other running back they're sticking in there. And just, I wouldn't trust the 9 on either side of this. So I was just a total stay away. And it's so hard to pick props on the Ravens side of things, too. Andrews is back, so I guess you could probably look for him a little bit. But it's a little Patriots style where, picking the roulette wheel of what Baltimore Ravens running back is going to be touting the ball and getting carries. You don't know. So it's just one of those things where I was just a complete stay away on this one. All right, let's go to the next one. NFC East matchup. I'm a little intrigued by this one. This was one I couldn't quite pull the trigger on. I think we talked,
I'm shocked. These are your teams. I'm shocked.
Well, I think we talked about 2 weeks ago or so when we thought the Giants started that fall off from, their start that they got off to, and we're playing a little bit above their heads. It seems like it's finally dropped off. Daniel Jones has come back to earth a little bit. Saquon isn't breaking off 100-yard games, and their defense has looked pretty vulnerable of late. And everything sort of flipped with my commies here. I wouldn't say it's pretty, but they resemble a lot more of that 2020 team that could rush the passer and give every quarterback problems. You got a good running game with Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, and they can just sort of control games. It's not pretty, and, Tyler Heineke isn't going to go out there and throw for 250, 300 yards. He's maybe could get a touchdown. He's going to have a low completion percentage. He's going to have yards, but they at least like him, which, if you have two bad quarterbacks, go with the one you like. Would it be my philosophy there? But 2.5 on the road versus the Giants, I don't know if I'm quite bold enough to take the commies here on the road as favorites. I'm curious what your take is on this one.
Well, I'll tell you how I feel about this game. This New York Giants defense, they give up the 4th most rushing yards to running back. They give up the 4th most receiving yards to tight ends. Their defense hasn't been super great as later you mentioned over the last couple of weeks. They've seemed to plateaued and taken a step back, if anything. That Dallas game was really big. You saw a big discrepancy in that second half. But if you look at that first half was really competitive. It looked like it was going to turn out to be a good game. So I'm not quite off the Giants bandwagon here just yet. I think they've got a little bit more, especially going up against a team within the divisional rival here. So I've got a few plays in this game here. And I'll tell you what, I like the Giants here as dogs. I know that 2.5 is not a big underdog here, but they're playing at home, and they're still getting 2.5 points. So I'm going to ride the Giants here at plus 2.5. You mentioned Robinson. He's been, in my opinion, the better running back of the two, and I feel like he's definitely been a little more productive, got a little more explosiveness coming out of the backfield. So I got Robinson here, anytime touchdown at minus 102. I got Logan Thomas at over 23.5 receiving yards, minus 121. And then I got Thomas as well, over 2.5 receptions at minus 119. A lot of that has to do with the fact that, as I mentioned, this Giants team defensively, they give up a lot to the running back. They give up a lot to the tight end.
Yeah, all right. So you're 0 for 2 in talking me into 2 of my tweener games here. No commies, no Jets for me. I'm out of the New York market so far. I had 2 plays in this one. Washington defensive special teams touchdown, plus 650 on this one with that pass rush. We've seen Daniel Jones get a little bit sloppy the last couple weeks with the ball. So I think there's a chance for that. Plus, they made Daniel Jones interception plus 120 on that one. So I like both those. Washington defense, special teams plus 650. Daniel Jones interception plus 120 on those two for me. So that's where I'm going with that one. We'll leave the commies out of it this week and see if they can continue on. But speaking of teams who could play Minnesota in the first round that I will want to bet on, the commies would be the number one as I watch Captain Kirk get annihilated by the Washington front line. All right, let's move on to our next one. I don't have a line play in this one. I got a couple player props in this one, but I have no idea how to handicap this. I guess Aaron Rodgers is going. Why? I have no earthly idea. He has bad ribs. He has bad attitude, and he has a crappy football team. But, you know, he makes his life destroying the Bears, so maybe that's what he wants to do. The Bears' defense has been just atrocious. Fields comes back. I guess that sort of helps the offense, at least the rushing attack. Green Bay's defense has been just awful. Packers are 4.5. My lean would be on the Bears on this, but I'm not touching the Bears at all, and I don't know what to make of the Packers. I can't even believe that Rodgers would play this game, but you know, that it would help to know if I was getting Jordan Love, I'd probably be a little bit more on the Packers here because I feel like they'd want to win games, but I just have no play if Rodgers is going to be the quarterback in this one.
You know, listen, I'm not a Green Bay guy. You know, I respect Aaron Rodgers and everything he's done. You know, multiple time MVP. You know, 300 how many countless passing yard games he's had. You know, it's Super Bowl champ at one point, though it's been like a long time. It's just he hasn't been horrible. He really hasn't been horrible. You know, his weapons are limited, but I've said it countless times. Great quarterbacks make mediocre wide receivers good, and he's not doing that so far this year. A lot of it has to do with the fact that he's dealing with that injury, as you mentioned, a little bit of a shock that he's playing. But to me, the biggest surprise of this game is the fact that we're getting Fields back, and for a guy who didn't like Justin Fields, or I'm not going to say I didn't like him. I just didn't think he was ready. The way he's elevated his running game, at least, which has opened up things for him in the passing game over the last several weeks, barring last week when he was hurt, has been really freaking fun to watch, to be honest with you. So I was excited to have him back for this matchup here, Green Bay versus Chicago. You know, historically, Green Bay has owned Chicago, especially during the Aaron Rodgers years. But I think things start changing, and I think this is probably the week when it starts. I'm going to write Chicago here +4. You know, I've got a few notes to give, obviously, if you want to make some prop bets. But realistically, this Green Bay defense is bad, other than their passing defense. Their passing defense has been good so far, statistically speaking. But again, I've said it before. I think it's only because you can run the ball on them so well. So my plays for this game are going to be based off of that. I got Chicago +4, as I mentioned. I got Aaron Jones anytime touchdown at minus 103 here, and that has to do with the fact that this Chicago defense gives up the 7th most rushing yards to running backs and the 4th most rushing touchdowns to running backs. I've got Montgomery anytime touchdown. 3rd most rushing yards to running backs for Green Bay. I said they give up a lot of yards on the ground. I've got Justin Fields over 66.5 rushing yards at minus 103 here. I know that he's coming off an injury, but I think that he's going to try and make an impact on this game as he does every game. And my last one, Aaron Jones over 56.5 rushing yards at minus 133. Again, this goes to how many yards Chicago gives up on the ground.
Yeah, I got a handful of ones. Justin Fields anytime touchdown at plus 115. I'm going to go Christian Watson, who's started to merge a little bit here the last couple weeks. Anytime touchdown plus 180. Also, Christian Watson, 100-plus receiving yards at plus 600. And then Aaron Jones, 100-plus rushing yards at plus 450 on this one. Both these defenses you mentioned are really, really poor. That's why I can't talk myself into the Bears, because their defense is just so bad. And even if we've seen, even if Fields rushes for 100 yards and David Montgomery rushes for 100 yards, their defense is giving up 150 yards plus a bunch of stuff through the air. So it's just too hard to really be real aggressive on the Bears, even though you think the play is probably the Bears this week. So I got a handful of player props playing that the defense is going to be bad, and that's where I'm going with that one. Next one up, Pittsburgh Steelers at the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going again with my Pittsburgh Steelers. I liked them last week. Their defense seems to be whole again. I don't want to say their offense looks great. It looks minorly competent. If we can go there, it is not an absolute zero. It might be a 5, but not an absolute 0. But I think defensively, they are at full strength. Watt looks good. Fitzpatrick's back. The secondary guys are back. And when those guys are back, it becomes really hard. You saw that last week to move the ball. Granted, we're now taking the Steelers and the Jags this week on the road, which I don't know.
Bodes well for you, buddy.
I don't know if you ever want to go into a sports book and be like, I have Steelers Jags heavy on the road this week. But honestly, I just didn't like what I saw from the Falcons last week. It seems like Mariota's getting worse and worse. Granted, they did not use him, but Kyle Pitts out now. You at least have to pretend to guard him, though they never throw him the ball. But it just seems like the bloom is a little bit off the Falcons' rose here, and I just think the Steelers are playing better. And honestly, I don't think there's that much of a home field advantage here in Atlanta. I think there'll be plenty of Steeler fans, down there cheering them on. So I just think the Steelers are playing better. So I got Steelers +1, and I got Marcus Mariota interception +130 as well.
So I was waiting on you, seeing as how this Atlanta team has been kind of your sweetheart pretty much all season long. I was waiting for you so I could try and get some more picks out of this. I've got one prop bet for the game. Vegas really knows what they're doing, making this a pick game, because I really had no feel as to which way I was leaning here. But I'll give you my prop here for this game. I've got Drake London over 35.5 receiving yards at -115. A lot of that has to do with the fact that this Atlanta defense gives up the 6th most receiving yards to wide receivers and the 5th most receiving touchdowns to wide receivers. This Kyle Pitts injury, I think, is going to impact this offense. Yes, granted, they didn't use him a lot in the passing game, other than a few plays here and there throughout the season, but he did a really good job, and I mentioned it a few weeks back, at run blocking. He was doing a stellar job, I thought, at it, and he wasn't getting a lot of credit for it because that's one of those stats you just don't see on paper. But the loss, I think, is actually going to impact them a lot more than people are anticipating here. So that's one of the reasons why I couldn't really come up with a lot of picks. But I might have to write some of yours along with my, Drake London over 35.5 receiving yards.
The only other thing that you probably lean towards Atlanta is somehow the NFC South. Atlanta's sitting right there to win the damn NFC South. Granted, I can basically say that for every team, including Carolina. Pittsburgh's not out of it, but it would take an extreme long shot with the sort of quality and depth in the AFC for them to even crawl back into that last wild card spot. Whereas basically Tampa Bay to Carolina are separated by 1 game. So, somehow Atlanta still, even if they're playing bad, this game probably means more to them than the Steelers, but I just think the Steelers are playing better, and I'm going to ride that. And I haven't liked the way Mariota has looked the last couple of weeks, where he started out being protective of the ball and sort of running this hybrid type offense. He hasn't been quite as protective of the ball of late, and that's just going to crush this Falcons team. So Steelers +1 and Mariota interception at +130 for me. Next up, somehow, for some reason, this is not the 4 o'clock game of the week. I can tell you which game my Sunday ticket game is going to be tuned to, but the Dolphins play the 49ers. 49ers, I was really stunned. 4.5 point favorites. I know this is a tricky spot here for the Dolphins going on the road, but I mean, the 49ers win, yes, but I wouldn't call anything they do as impressive points getting and winning. Every game seems to be within that 3-point field goal margin. So I was a little stunned at 4.5. I just couldn't grab the Dolphins, but I'm curious your take on this one because I ended up passing on all the stuff because I just didn't know how this was really going to play out other than I got a little bit of a Jimmy Garoppolo pop in here.
Well, I'll tell you what, just looking at the stats here, there's on paper, there's really nothing that favors this Miami Dolphins offense. This San Francisco defense is just pretty stellar. They've been really good all season long. I know that a lot of people talk about how good their defense is, but no one really puts into perspective how good they are compared to what the level of play that they've been facing. Even so, for some reason, I've got this weird gut feeling here. So I'm just going to go ahead and ride my gut here. Okay, I've got Miami here +4.5. I know they're on the road. I know the San Francisco team defensively can wreak havoc on you, but I just feel that Miami's got too much speed. I feel they match up with anybody, even going up against really good defenses because of the amount of speed they've had. Tua has been playing stellar every single game that he's been in this year so far without being hurt. He's put up really good games. So I'm going to go ahead and ride Tua and the Dolphins here at +4.5. There are a couple of probabilities here for prop bets for San Francisco's offense. Garoppolo has a shot here. Miami gives with the second most yards to running backs. They give the sixth most rushing touchdowns to quarterbacks. George Kittle, I know that he hasn't been a big part of the San Francisco offense here, but going up against this Miami defense, they give it the fourth most receiving touchdowns to tight ends and the sixth, if I'm not mistaken, most receiving yards to tight ends. So maybe this is a game where George Kittle kind of makes a little bit of a comeback here. So my prop bets for the game, George Kittle, anytime touchdown at +180, and then a possible revenge touchdown, Wilson, anytime touchdown +101.
Yeah, I think that's where I sat. I was in two minds here. I have a gut feeling the Dolphins are going to win this game and just put on a little bit of an offensive show, and I just don't think, even with the McCaffrey, I just don't feel like this 49ers teams can score a ton of points, and that's why they don't blow teams out. They keep getting these big numbers, but they can't blow teams out, and also they're scared to really let Garoppolo throw, 25, 30 times a game. And the thing that pulled me back from it is, one, it seems dark, but I'm a little scared what happens if Tua gets hit. And the one team I know who will get to the quarterback and hit him is the 49ers. And everything might be okay, but, one head slam to the turf, and then we're watching Teddy Bridgewater go in there and check down to Jeff Wilson for 40 minutes, which
would help one of my bets anyways. But yeah,
that's correct. So that's where maybe by 4 o'clock I talk myself into the Dolphins getting that 4.5 points, but I just can't do it right now. But I don't think I'd touch San Francisco at -4.5. It just doesn't seem like a good play. And I
believe Debo's banged up too. Yeah. So
the other thing, I think if San Francisco wins this game, I don't think they're going to be real aggressive on offense. I think their whole plan would be to just keep Miami off the field. So it might be something where they just try to win this thing 17-14 and say good day. Yeah, Dolphins might score on 3 of the 4 possessions they have, but That's all they're going to get.
That's all they get, yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like a hard game to read, but I'm really, really excited to sort of see this Dolphins team step up against a real defense and see if this explosive sort of playmaking works, because this will be more of a true sort of test to see what they will be like in the playoffs, which I'm really curious about, if this Dolphins team can be a real contender or just a really fun regular season team that everybody packs a bunch of fantasy stats for. So I have one play in this one, and that's Jimmy Garoppolo passing touchdowns under 1.5 at -110. I just think, like I said, I think if the Niners want to win this game, they're just going to try to control possession, time, and not be real aggressive on throwing the football. All right, let's go to the next one, and sadly, we have to break this one down. I
think I know which one's coming.
I don't know how we're going to break this one down.
Okay.
I will say I almost sent you an article from some random LA Rams blog that said this game will be the turning point for the Rams season, either good or bad.
Gosh.
I don't know what fanboy has been watching, but that turning point was in Tampa Bay 4 weeks ago.
Breaking news! The Rams have been bad for a few weeks. It's been more than a few weeks.
The season is over, and now they're basically putting everybody on their team on IR. Seattle's 6.5-point favorites. With the way that Seattle defense has looked the last couple weeks, granted the offense continues to look good. I didn't really love the 6.5. I couldn't go there, but once again, the number for the Rams to get me to take them would have to be much higher than 6.5 pretty much the rest of the year, because there's just nothing on offense, nothing at all. So if a team gets to 17, I'm going, this game's over. I'm not sure they can get to 10. What do you make of this Seahawks-Rams game?
Listen, I will say these both teams, divisional rivals, they tend to play each other really tough, regardless of which team is on top during any given season. They play each other really well. So at least in terms of being a fan of either side here, you're going to get some enjoyment watching this game. But to be honest with you, there's lots of injuries for this Rams team. There's lots of illness injuries for this Seattle team. I believe during the week, there were reports of up to like 5 or 6 starters coming down with some sort of illness here. So for that reason, and for the reason that this Rams team's pretty bad, and the Seattle team's kind of been up and down, I have no play in this game, but I nothing I could recommend at least. I do have a Kenneth Walker anytime touchdown in my personal bets, but it's nothing that I'd really recommend. This Rams defense, although they give up some points, they give up some yards. They do pretty well at not breaking, although Aaron Donald's kind of banged up right now, and God knows how many guys they have on the IR. I believe Matthew Stafford was headed to the IR too with his concussions, even though he had cleared concussion protocol. So basically, all this tells me is this team is looking to see what kind of depth they have going forward for next year, and just trying to save face by saying, you know what, we're losing all these games because all of these guys are on IR. I love my team, but season's pretty much over.
Yeah. I don't know whose blog that was, but I will say.
Are they hiring? That's my question. Because I think I can provide some. I think I can provide some analysis.
But yeah, I have no plays in this one. I don't know what the Seattle Seahawks defense is going to bring. Maybe the Rams defense can stall them out a little bit, but it just seems like this Seahawks offense is flying too high, so they just won't be able to score enough. I'm a little sad you stopped your Allen Robinson touchdown props. Those were fun each week.
Listen, that went the way of Matthew Stafford's. I shouldn't even joke about this, of his brain health. It went the same way. They both went south, and that was pretty much it.
That brain health went looking on these along the lines.
I feel so bad joking about that.
And said, I'm not throwing to this lot. Nonetheless, that one, it just seems like an easy path. And I looked heavy into Kenneth Walker stuff. This was another one. He was like 220 for 100 plus yards. I was like, why the hell would I take that?
And I think he was almost minus 200 for an anytime touchdown. And I'm like, there's just no value. I mean, yes, there's a chance he's going to hit one. But like I said, this Rams defense hasn't been horrible. Their biggest issue this season has been their offense and their offensive line.
Well, that's
and their running attack.
Yeah,
and
that's
their
what I mean. The only thing that you could say would lead to a Rams victory was if this defense stepped up and shut down Seattle. And if that's the case, then Kenneth Walker isn't getting that touchdown. So there's just no value in it. We'll move on to the next one. This is the 4 o'clock main event game here. Kansas City Chiefs, Cincinnati Bengals. I know it sounds lame because I took both the main event 4 o'clock games here and I don't have any bets, but I just don't have a good read on this.
I agree. It was definitely a lot. I mean, I'm looking at my list here for the afternoon games, and there's not a lot of picks compared to the morning games here.
I want to watch these games. I want to watch Dolphins San Francisco. I want to watch Kansas City Cincinnati. This line literally sits.
I want to watch Rams Seattle. Oh, who said that? Who said that?
But this line sort of sits perfect it's not enough points to make me want to take Cincinnati, but it's just sort of enough to not make me grab the Chiefs at 2.5 on the road. I don't want to say games aren't important, but this game doesn't matter to the Chiefs. With as poor as that division is, they're in. I'm not sure they're all that concerned about home field advantage. This team has been through the playoffs 400 billion times. They can go on the road and win. They can play at home and win. It's just one of those things. This game probably means more to Cincinnati because they are in a little bit of a playoff fight tied with Baltimore here. If you look at Baltimore's schedule, it's really, really light to close out the season. And you reverse that, Cincinnati's schedule is really, really difficult to close out the season, starting with this game. So, you sort of penciled the Bengals in as a shoe-in in the playoffs, but getting some wins here at home is really, really important. I know they sent out an email to all season ticket holders, begging them to come to the game and make some noise. So you can sort of see that they know that games like this are important to get wins because if you don't win your division, you're in a hole here fighting a lot of teams with around the same record for that last, playoff spot or two.
Which is something they kind of had to go through last season for Cincinnati. So probably not something they want to go through again here. I was a little more timid about this until I read that Joe Mixon hadn't cleared concussion protocol as of this morning. I know that Jamar Chase is listed as questionable, but it seems like he's going to be a full go. They're just going to monitor his playing, throughout the game here. But I think he'll be okay. With all that being said here, I've got 2 plays for this game. I've got Kansas City -2, and then I've got Jamar Chase anytime touchdown plus 103. Looking at the stats here, it shows that Kansas City has no favorable matchups here on offense. For Cincinnati, though, this Kansas City defense gives up the most passing touchdowns to quarterbacks, the 4th most receiving yards to running backs, 7th most receiving yards to wide receivers, 1st most receiving touchdowns to wide receivers. So they give up a lot here. But even then, don't get me wrong, this Buffalo Bills team is probably the most talented team in the league, based off players, based off defensive players, offensive, all that. But I still think in my heart that this Kansas City team is probably the best team in the league, just overall. They seem to do it regardless of who's in the lineup. You don't know who's going to have a favorable matchup, as you can tell from the stats, because they spread the ball around so much. They can switch up from a passing attack to a rushing attack. So with all that being said, I'm going to write the Chiefs here. Like I said, Kansas City -2 at -110, and Jamar Chase anytime touchdown plus 103.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how seriously the Chiefs take this game, and I'll see how seriously the Bengals take this game. I'm curious if the Bengals come out here and try to seize this game really, really big. But nothing for me. Like I said, we'll move on to the next one, and I'm living in a world of just craziness. Like I mentioned, I have Steelers on the road, I have Jaguars on the road, and I'm going to complete the trifecta here with the Los Angeles Chargers on the road. Really, any sane person that doesn't have a gambling problem would not bet on this game because, quite honestly, there is no way in hell to tell which one of either of these teams is showing up in this game. The only thing I could probably say was who's ever trailing in the fourth quarter, take the other side would be my advice. So I got Chargers plus 2.5. I think Mike Williams is going to be a go, and I think that sort of puts the Chargers over the top here. But, Raiders, they once again remembered that they probably have the best running back right now in the league and have used him 2 weeks in a row. That being said, anyone who bets on the Raiders, there's always a probability he gets 8 carries this week. So
the question is, do you trust Josh McDaniels to stick to the running attack?
So you tell me how you handicapped this craziness of a game.
Well, I'll tell you what, I as you mentioned, this Raiders team has been doing what they do best, which is running the ball. When they do so, they're really successful.
Yeah.
But this Chargers team's starting to get healthy. They're not fully healthy, but they're starting to get healthy, especially on offense. And we saw what this team was able to do last year on offense. Now, this year, Eckler's been completely astounding. I mean, he reminds me of Marshall Faulk, the way he's been catching and running the ball from the backfield. He slowed down a little bit over the last couple of weeks, but I still expect to have a big game from him this week, especially with the way that things kind of plan out here. This Raiders team gives up the most receiving yards to running backs, and we know that they like to pass to Eckler here, so possibly a big game for him coming up. But I'll give you my place for this game. I'm going with another gut feeling here. I'm riding the Chargers as well at plus 2.5 at minus 110. I've got Eckler at over 102.5 rushing / receiving yards. So over 102.5 rushing and receiving yards. There's a good chance that you might be able to parlay in a touchdown here, an anytime touchdown if that's a little too rich for you. It gets a little bit of value there. I've got Gerald Everett, anytime touchdown at plus 270. And then I've got Keenan Allen, anytime touchdown at plus 135. And that's really just because this Raiders team gives up the 5th most receiving touchdowns to tight ends. And they give up a lot of passing yards and passing touchdowns. So that's my analysis for this one.
Yeah, I have a parlay with this game as well. But, yeah, Chargers plus 2.5. We're both on that, which probably means for sure
the Raiders are going to win.
Bad mismanagement in the fourth quarter is going to happen. We'll probably go for it on our 1 yard line on 4th and 15 or something and hand the Raiders back the ball for a 1 yard touchdown to win the game or some nonsense. So I'm already prepared for that disappointment. But we'll see if the Chargers can pull this one out. I do like them always better when they're getting points than giving them away. So maybe that's where we live. Just take either Vegas or the Chargers whenever they're getting points. When they're favored, stay away. All right, Sunday Night Football. Apparently, they didn't want anybody to watch Sunday Night Football this week. Colts, Cowboys, 10.5 point spread. Wasn't touching that. I couldn't even find any really good player props because both Pollard and Elliott were way too juiced. You don't know how that carry split's going to be. CeeDee Lamb was too juiced, and other than Matt Ryan getting sacked a lot, I didn't quite know what to do on the side of the Colts. So I'm a no-go in this one. Why the hell this has not been flexed out of the Sunday night game, I don't know, but whatever. What do you got, Colts, Cowboys here, 10.5?
Listen, the only reason they haven't been flexed out is because of who's playing in this game. The Dallas Cowboys, obviously always draw a lot of attention when it comes to NFL and ratings. But listen, I've got no play in here. The only thing I've got for this game is says wait on Champ. I was kind of hoping that this is one of those games that you might have had a pick or two in, because I have no plays in this one. I really don't like the prop bets in this one. There was very little value, if any, to be found here. So I'm a no-go on this one.
Take some sort of Colts player, which I did not.
No, I wasn't going to jump on that. And probably the only player that I would possibly think about taking going up against this Dallas defense would have possibly been Taylor, and there was just no value there. So I'm a no-go here for this game, but I guess I'll have to watch it. I mean, I've got no choice. It's a Sunday night game.
Yeah, I probably will be going to the films for this one. I can't believe this is on. I will say I'm sad that it's come to an end. I probably won't be able to bet against the Colts the rest of the year. I had that nice boost where I got them on Vegas 2 weeks ago, and then for some reason the odds makers thought the Colts were semi-good again, and I got 2 weeks worth of decent Colts lines, but it appears back up to 10.5. They no longer want people betting against the Colts, so 10.5 couldn't do anything with. Monday night, I don't know if this will be entertaining. It's certainly interesting because the Saints can work themselves right back into the division, and I just don't know what the Bucs are. I talked to our friend Todd, last week, and I said, are the Bucs starting to scare you a little bit? And we both sort of agreed, and we're like, yeah. And then I watched them play on Sunday.
That's all it took, huh?
And once again, no, the Bucs don't scare me a little bit. I took the Saints because they sort of own the Bucs and getting 3.5 points. I mean, Tampa doesn't score points in the red zone. Literally ever. This team does not score touchdowns. So I'm taking Saints plus 3.5. They can work themselves right back into contention in this division. So that's where I got it. Player prop wise, there's just nothing because probably Olive's your best spot, but he was pretty heavily juiced. Tampa Bay, there's no clue what you're getting there. They have no running game, what to speak of. Mike Evans, all of a sudden, can no longer catch footballs, and Tom Brady seems to just throw the ball away when he even smells an opposing player getting around him. So I just have Saints plus 3.5 in this one. Where are you going with this?
Listen, I've got two prop bets here. Excuse me. I'm choking because I don't even want to tell you what they are, especially after you double down on this team does not score touchdowns. I don't know how this would ever hit. This is more of a 50-50 thing because I don't see a scenario where two of these guys get touchdowns. I've got Godwin anytime touchdown at plus 130 and Evans anytime touchdown at plus 150. I don't see how both of them hit here. I think that there's maybe a shot for one of them to hit. But again, I just wanted to play for Monday Night Football. Maybe once we finish all of Sunday's games and we get into Monday Night Football, maybe I'll feel a little more brave and actually take some more picks here. But as of now, I don't even feel good about those prop bets, so I'm not recommending them. So I'm going to say no play for this one.
Yeah, that goes that. So interesting close to the NFL week, but nonetheless, should be a handful of really, really good games. So excited about those and excited about next week as we talk to them because we sort of get to the last little spot here in the NFL season with the playoff push really, really starting to come. So I had one parlay. It was the Chargers game. Herbert 2+ touchdowns, Herbert 300+ yards. He destroys this Raiders teams all the time. So that one's plus 185. Not great odds, but I think it's a pretty solid bet to happen to get 2-1 on. So Herbert 2+ touchdowns, 300+ yards for me on the same game. Parlay, that's all I got parlay wise. What do you got parlay wise?
I've got a couple of parlays here. I'm going to start off with this first one. This is in the same game parlay in the Cleveland-Houston game. Again, not a lot of value, but it seems higher probability to hit as far as parlays are concerned. I've got Nick Chubb over 94.5 rushing yards and an anytime touchdown at plus 143. That's my same game parlay. Then I've got two-legger here, spread. Kansas City -2, Minnesota -3. That gives you odds of plus 273. I've got a three-legger anytime touchdown here. Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, and Etienne anytime touchdown at plus 427. And then I've got a pick and choose underdog parlay here. So there's a couple different ways of getting this one. The first way is doing the spread. You got the Giants plus 2.5, Chicago plus 4. Both of those teams are at home. Miami plus 4.5 on the road, and the Chargers plus 2.5 on the road. And that gives you plus 1228. It can be teased to not great value, especially for a four-legger, which I got it at Giants plus 9.5, Chicago plus 11, Miami plus 11.5, and the Chargers plus 9.5 at plus 250. Not again for a four-legger, not great, but you're giving yourself a lot of wiggle room there. But you can also do a money line parlay for almost 3,000 odds here, plus 3,000. I would feel bold taking a three-legger for the spread, but even a two-legger money line here, possibly the two ones at home, can pay out pretty good money here. But again, it's a pick and choose, so kind of dive at that at your own risk.
Well, we're living in a dark world where you have a longer list of parlays than I do. It's a dark, dark world.
Listen,
indeed.
to be fair, you've been coming in heavy with those soccer bets, so it gave me a little more time since I don't have to dive into soccer bets here.
Oh, yeah. If we're listening, Senegal to qualify. Go for it, 3-1. All right.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, jumping on that one.
All right, that's our show for the week. We'll be back next week. Dynamite David will be in. We'll wrap up the college football season and look back on all our picks and our futures. Our man Achilles Reign will be back with us on Sunday to break down NFL Week 14 and see if we can hit some more winners after I'm predicting a hot week this week with lots of winners. So be sure to like, subscribe. Don't miss any of our content on the Greenlight Network. That's our show, and we're out.